The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Rise up, 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 rise up. Showtime. Just lift your eyes up, let your wise rise up. See the signs of the times. If it's time, rise up, rise up. When death and hell dwell among all God's people, when those we chose and trusted have become completely corrupted and inherently evil, when the feast that feeds you starves our father's children, when snuff, porn, and pedo forms begin to get top billing, rise up. When famine claims millions, when justice gives blind eyes to billions, when the Lord's anger is no longer feared, if his protection is gone and your enemies are near, if you've seen the seas spill over and the mountains shake, break, and fall, if the moon ever turns blood red and you can't see the sun at all, rise up.
Good evening and welcome to New Abolitionist Radio. This is Scotty Reed broadcasting from behind the enemy lines of USA Inc. Again, you are tuned in to New Abolitionist Radio. We broadcast this program every Wednesday night, Lord willing, at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you for joining us tonight. Max is still without power down there in South Carolina, but he is at home with minimum damage to the area, so that's good news, but he's not able to join us tonight. I do have Otis as well as yourself who are going to help co-host, and they've been doing a great job over the past couple of weeks. So let me get into what we will be talking about tonight, but you can also share any information you would like to share by giving us a call at 866-510-9025. That's 866-510-9025. Hit star to put yourself in a caller's queue. Always watch your background noise, but at the first opportunity, we will bring you in to give you an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment on one of the many stories and other information that we share with you on this broadcast. So thank you again. This is the award-winning broadcast, New Abolitionist Radio, documenting legalized slavery and human trafficking. This is a global problem, but particularly atrocious behind the enemy lines of USA Inc. And the United States, this is a fact. This isn't, my opinion. These are, we dealing with numbers. It's mathematics. The United States is home to the world's largest prison population. It contains the world's largest captive labor force and human bodies treated as commodities. Like I mentioned, Max is on vacation. He may call in, who knows, if he has phone service. So he may call in, we may hear from him, but of course he's with us in spirit. So we got a number of news stories to share of importance, and we will cover our regular segments, but like last week, we're going to mix them up throughout the broadcast to ensure we make time for them all. And one more time, feel free with your questions or comments. Give us a call at 866-510-9025, 866-510-9025. No question is a dumb question. The only one, they keep telling me that the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So if you're unclear about anything we're talking about, or you need more clarification, give us a call. That's what we're here for, to interact with you. So let me check my board before we get started. Okay, we do have our co-host, but let me tell you what's on the menu for tonight, if you will. A writer of the 21st Century Underground Railroad is Andrew Leander Wilson, who was freed in March of this year. He was enslaved in California and spent 32 years behind bars for the 1984 murder of 21-year-old Christopher Hansen, which he did not commit. In the segment For Freedom's Sake, a history of rebellion, I'm going to, when I'm, able to participate more in doing these show lineups, is when we talk about the history of rebellion, go outside of the United States, because slavery is global. And indeed, Max shortly will be traveling to Ghana, him and Tribal Rain, abolitionists from the U.S. representing on the continent of Africa, because they recognize global slavery. Okay, so as part of For Freedom's Sake, a history of rebellion, let's look at worldwide rebellions. And tonight we're going to look at Panama. And this was an interesting story, and with a personal backstory for me, because I had a cousin who was based in he was in the United States Army like I was, but he was stationed in Panama for a while, and he had some pictures of these African-looking sisters. I'd have thought they were African Americans or Nigerians, or you know how fashion is pretty global now. Sometimes you just can't tell, especially from pictures. But I'm like, man, who these sisters down here? And they indigenous. They got indigenous Africans in Panama. So Panama has an extensive history of rebellions by enslaved Africans going back to the 16th century. And they were quite successful. In fact, they say it was the largest. But I will share more of what we found about the history of rebellions in Panama. Shout out to the indigenous descendants of freedom fighters that's in Panama. Our abolitionist in profile is Bayano, also known as Bolano or Vano, who was an African enslaved by Spaniards in the mid-1500s, who led the biggest revolt against slavery in the 16th century in present-day Panama. So shout out to Panama. Our segment on the Constitution and You, of course, will be provided by Yusef Hassan. Again, going to just, because a lot of people, actually, I was having a conversation, Brother Yusef, the other day with a neighbor who lived across the street. He'd been living across the street for years, never really talked to him or ever, but he cool with one of my cousins. And so I was talking to this dude, and we're talking about slavery. Of course, I'm going to bring that up. And the Constitution never abolishing slavery, and he just, making statements like a lot of people don't know what's in the Constitution because they don't read it. So that is what Brother Yusef will be providing on New Abolitionist Radio, of course, in the context of 21st century slavery and human trafficking. So let's go ahead and allow our co-host for tonight, our guest host, Otis, and Brother Yusef to give a opening hello to our listeners and make any statements that they want to make as we get into the program. Greetings, brothers.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Well, I'm getting feedback.
It'll go away. Just keep talking.
Okay. I wasn't used to getting that feedback. You never like the sound of your own voice. But, once again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join in on the call. I guess I was having so much trouble catching the calls before. Black said, "Okay, I'm gonna get you on here. That way you're gonna be you're gonna be tuned in every Wednesday." But it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just excited to hear what you and Otis have to share with us tonight.
Well, I'm glad to be back here. I was just trying to get a sneak peek over some of the stuff that Yusef is going over and trying to figure out which articles I'm responsible for. I see Herman Bell and a few other that I looked over earlier.
Well, actually, Otis, I'm sorry. It used the link to the discussion group, which is in Black Talk Radio's btrcommunity.com. I did include that link because Max added some stories, and so yeah. So we have some stories, but I'll handle that. So if you could get to that link like we did last week, that's where all the stories will be posted. And it is public, so anybody can go to btrcommunity.com, although we rather you go ahead and join and get a $24 a year subscription to join Black Talk Radio Network's version of Facebook and social networking, and also fund the movement. All right, so join us there. So Otis, that's where the stories will be found. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, just wanted to get that information out
I'm
there.
Good.
So there was no confusion.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
I'll look for it.
All right, so okay, if you guys have nothing further, then the first thing I want to do is inform our listeners. Let me talk about the title, though. Why did I choose that title? And what is the title there? Well, Donald Trump is being faced with a resolution, a bipartisan resolution. I heard it was unanimously passed, which it was an not unprecedented, but unusual step for Congress to basically make a policy statement. And that's all it is. It's like a press release. And they usually don't try to push these sort of things into law. It's just like a statement on something, on an issue. But they took the unusual step of actually making this something that had to be signed by the president, the CEO of USA Inc., Donald Trump. And what this resolution says is that he must flat out condemn white supremacy and recognize it as domestic terrorism, and devote federal resources to combating this centuries-old problem that the United States government, quite frankly, has never been serious about fighting. Now, that's something important, though. That's something important, again, could be historic in such a thing, probably never being debated since the 1950s and 60s, certainly the 1960s, where there was a lot of political pressure from the grassroots for change. So this could be unprecedented. Going back, when you specifically targeting white supremacist terrorism, then I can't really think of any administration that ever done that, specifically naming them. I had to go back to former Union Army general who became president, Ulysses S. Grant. So I just want people to recognize the historical significance of Congress being united in forcing a sitting president to put it on paper. Either you're going to sign this, which means you agree with it, and you are binding yourself to fighting white supremacist terrorism, or you can veto it. And then you telling everybody where you stand, in case there's some people out there who's kind of slow and they don't know where he stands already. So this is kind of unique. But again, it falls short of one of the demands of the August 19th D.C. rally we had, and all the 20 other sister rallies across the nation. And what was one of those demands? That demand was that Congress take up the issue of the exception clause, the slavery exception clause in the 13th Amendment. So it falls short of that, but it's pushing in the right direction. See, what they need to be pointed out to them is that white supremacist terrorism was implemented to slavery of blacks only. And now, because people been pushing, we had a civil war over it. Now, they do include non-black people, but still black people make up their primary victims of modern day slavery and human trafficking. But again, this is a global institution. So that's the reason for the title. Yeah, that's historic that they calling him out or taking him to task like that and making him put it on paper, which this is sort of binding. But again, these people break the law all the time, so I'm not being unrealistic, but just acknowledging that we haven't seen this sort of movement, but it still falls short of Congress taking up the issue of slavery abolitionism. So that's the reason for the title. Yes, Otis, go ahead, please join us.
You bring it up all the time in your broadcasting. He's an official of the United States government, and media is recording his every action. They can go contemporary and pretend that he's okay to get away with what he does with Twitter and everything. But you already know if his actions continue without making some kind of official statement against them, that opens them up to going to human rights, world commissions and everything. He can continue to be Donald Trump, but if he doesn't do some kind of official act to say that he's not for them, eventually someone will end up before somewhere because he's an official of the United States. He's the top official. So Congress can't afford to just let him keep running all willy-nilly and not doing something in official capacity to say we refute these people. Are you with me?
I'm here. Did we lose Scotty?
I think so.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I had myself muted. My bad. I'm juggling over here. We would have to go back to 1871, the Civil Rights Act of 1871, also named the Klan Act, which empowered the CEO of USA Inc. to target domestic terrorism, white supremacy, neo-Confederacy, who were terrorizing former victims of slavery and black people in general, and of course non-white people. So that's historic in that. But now, before we get into the program, I do want to just tell people, if you're in the South Carolina, North Carolina area, because I'm like right across the border from South Carolina, but if you're in the Greenville area, and let me pull up this information on Chronic 2017, which I have the honor of being one of the speakers, myself along with Max Parthis are going to share some time. This is the Carolina Human Rights Organizing Conference. It will go down September the 15th through the 17th. This again will occur in Greenville, South Carolina. It will be 3 days of workshops, panel discussions, and solution-based ideals with grassroots activists and organizers engaged in frontline struggles for civil and human rights in the Carolinas and beyond. So the location, if you're in the area, please join us at the Upstate Circle of Friends. Again, that's the Upstate Circle of Friends at 29 Ridgeway Drive, Greenville, South Carolina. That's 29605. So just throw that in your GPS. 29 Ridgeway Drive, Greenville, South Carolina, 29605. So I hope that you will join me. I will be speaking on grassroots digital radio as a grassroots organizing tool, and basically just talking about where we are in terms of mass communications and the grassroots access to mass and communications, and not fighting for access to the corporate media stream, but creating our own media streams using new media technology. And it's very affordable. If it wasn't affordable, I can tell you, and this isn't a slight against anyone, but considering the low amount of donations we've taken in over the 9 years, but as a policy, not applying for a lot of grants or things of that nature so we can maintain our autonomy and what have you, we have been able to survive for 9 years as a platform, a global platform. I mean, this platform, Alexa says, is ranked in the top 500,000 of websites out of billions of websites, the top half a million platforms, right? And so I'll be talking about that as a strategy in order for you to localize your media. Let's stop complaining about what's on the radio, being controlled by iHeart Radio, or whatever radio station, whatever corporation is running the radio station. You don't like the killer radio they producing, bam, compete against them with digital radio. Mostly everybody is connected. There's free Wi-Fi everywhere. We need to take advantage of that. Plus, terrestrial radio's dying. So that's what I'll be speaking about, and Max will wrap it up by tying in this tool into how we've used it over the past 5 years in abolition. So, yeah, just wanted to invite people to join us this weekend in Greenville, South Carolina. So the first story, I'm sorry, so Otis, were you able to find the stream? Does everybody? And wait a minute, I think we may have Max on the line. And if so, he might as well join in and host with us. But 803, who do we have on the line? 803.
I think it's Scott Reed. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I believe that's Mr. Parthis.
Yes, sir. Man, I'd love to help you out tonight, but for tonight, I think I'm going to let you and Yusuf and Otis handle it. These two brothers have been doing a great job for these past 2 weeks. Gave me some time to do the things I need to do to be able to avoid this damn hurricane. And, we just got back, and I'm using my cell phone for everything, so that's very difficult to begin with. And I brought a flu back with me, so it's not a good day. But you guys are doing a great job, man. I'm so proud of you all. And Scotty, that topic that you brought up about Congress forcing Trump to address white supremacy, to recognize white supremacy.
Hey, your audio
I think that is a watershed moment.
Yeah, it is.
Yes?
But your audio's kind of uneven.
I think that's a watershed moment. The epitome of white supremacy is black slavery, or just slavery in general. Like, everybody's supposed to be enslaved to them. So if they recognize that, they should be able to recognize the rest. It's just a matter of time.
Valid point.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Well, like I said, man, I'll be sneezing all over this phone. So you guys handle it. You're doing a great job, man. I'll be back next week for sure. And we'll finish off where we started, and then slavery.
All right, Max.
That's right.
Peace
Get
to you
well,
and the
man.
fam. All right. So, Otis, I'm posting the stories in the chat room. Anybody want to take slavery in the U.S. prison system? Give us a brief synopsis of the article in your commentary, and we'll pass it around. But Max posted this story, Slavery in the U.S. Prison System, on AlJazeera.com. Either one of you want to take that, guys?
Wow.
Oh yeah, I remember. You can go ahead, Otis. You
Okay.
know, I always.
All right, I read over it some time ago. I'll it says basically Al Jazeera front lines prisons, 24,000 prisoners across 29 states. 24,000 prisoners across 29 prisons in 12 states protested against inhumane conditions, timing it around the anniversary of the Attica prison uprising, a prison strike now 46 years old. That violent uprising originated from prisoners rebelling against overcrowded cells, unsanitary conditions, medical neglect, and abuse. From Attica to the strike led by the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee last year. These protests draw attention to an ugly truth. Prisoner abuse runs rampant, and it has extended into modern-day versions of slavery. Last year's strike organizers described slavery-like conditions in prisons in the nationwide call to action. Slavery persists by another name today. Young men and women of color toil away in 21st century fields and sew in hand, and corporate America is cracking the whip. Influenced by enormous corporate lobbying, the United States Congress enacted the Prison Industrial Enhancement Certification Program in 1979, which permitted U.S. companies to use prison labor. Coupled with the drastic increase in the prison population during this period, profits for participating companies and the revenue for the government and its private contractors soared. The Federal Bureau of Prisons now runs a program called Federal Prison Industries, UNICOR, that pays inmates under $1 an hour. The program generated $500 million in sales in 2016 alone, with little of that cash being passed down to prison workers. Stateside, where much of the U.S. addiction to mass incarceration lies, is no different. California prison labor program is expected to produce some $232 million in sales in 2017. I don't know how much of this you want to go over, but I can tell you it says in states like Virginia and Oklahoma, which is my home state, 1 in every 14 or 15 African American men are put in prison. So that's not only is the federal system incarcerating us in undue numbers, the state systems in all 50 states are doing the very same thing. We lock up people of color at alarming rates. We put them to work, corporations gain. This story is an age-old American tradition. Throughout history, our nation has successfully pulled back corporate greed, but private corporations have always found new ways to reap enormous wealth from cheap labor. The historical circumstances following the abolition of slavery provided the necessary context to understand how corporations function in a de facto replacement for slavery. That's one of the few things I have a problem with the wording of this, because we agree slavery was never abolished. Although the U.S. Constitution's 13th Amendment prohibited slavery and involuntary servitude, it made an exception, a loophole, for punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, which made prison labor possible. Workers flipping burgers and frying French fries for minimum wage at McDonald's were uniforms that were manufactured by prison laborers. I don't know, Scotty, if you want to.
No, that's good.
Wake up and talk about that a little more.
No, I mean, yes, we can toss it around, but that's enough for the article. That's great. Y'all have to. If I seem a little distracted, I'm trying to multitask, cause we got mind, body, and spirit, and I had to get their stuff up. So, but look, this is what I took from that article. And it mentioned all the right things. It kept saying slavery over and over. I kept hearing slavery, slave light, slavery. Then they read the 13th Amendment, pointed out the 13th Amendment exception clause. I want to point out to you that this is an article from 2014 from Al Jazeera. Okay. And again, this is evidence. If what I heard from Reverend Barber, who is the head of the North Carolina chapter of the NAACP, although somebody told me that he left, that was actually on New Abolitionist Radio. Somebody told me he had left to go join something else, and I just haven't really had time to follow, that story. But he said that investigative journalism, news reports, this is all you need is to file. These are all you need as evidence to file complaints, because you are able to show pattern in practice, and it's coming from the news media and journalists, people willing to testify that this is true. So this is evidence. Actually, when people talk about evidence for a crime, you can enter this into the record. That's part of the great thing about New Abolitionist Radio and us sharing these stories with you, is because we're helping to document it. So if that story gets deleted, that site goes down for whatever reason, we got a podcast over here where we were talking about that. So these stories are very important, but it's more important to use the correct language, which I noticed Al Jazeera. This is from Al Jazeera. Now this person is probably U.S. based, but somehow they are plugged into the abolitionist movement, the new abolitionist movement, because prior to, and this goes again to what I'll be speaking about at Chronic, the power of media that Malcolm X told us about, is that in the 5 years that we have been on air, we have changed it, the media narrative, that we're even seeing some corporate stream media even refer to it as slavery. You might hear it from RT, you might hear it from the Iranians. It's usually going to be this foreign media. But here's Al Jazeera, and they're calling it slavery. So again, this is an international movement. So don't think that that we're not making an impact with the media that we are producing on it. That's just the power, man. That's the power of media, that we're able to impact a corporate entity like that and get an article out of them 2 years ago calling it slavery. But yeah, like Max said in his one of the keynote speeches, he was like, but we still had people on that stage calling it mass incarceration. So let me pass it off to you guys. Your thoughts on this article.
You know, I mirror everything you say. The one that really jumps out at me is there one line, just picturing it, where they say slavery persists by another name today. Young men and women of color toil away in 21st century fields, sow in hand, and corporate America is cracking the whip. You know, and I'm looking at that visual image because a lot of times when you have a conversation with someone about slavery, that's what comes to mind to them. You know, so they're saying, okay, there are no whips. You know, no one's getting whipped and things of that nature, so they believe that slavery doesn't still exist. And I thought it was ironic that he chose these words to say it that way. Young men and women of color are toiling away in the fields, and corporate America is cracking the whip, because that's exactly what's making it slavery right now, is that you don't have individuals owning anymore, but you have these corporations that are actually the slave owners now, or the slavers, the enslavers nowadays, that it's corporate America doing it, and that they're blatantly selling the labor on the stock market. So I thought that was just unique, that jumped right out of the article. A lot of good information in the article, a lot of great statistics. You know, whoever did this article did some extensive research. VJ Dash is a Washington-based essayist and policy advocate who writes on social, economic, and criminal justice issues. David Love is a Philadelphia-based freelance journalist and commentator, an adjunct professor, instructor at Rutgers University School of Communication and Information. So, you know, maybe at some point in the future we have to try to reach out to either of them or both of them, you know, because I'm curious as to what led them to writing this article. Because this is an opinion. It comes in the opinion section of Al Jazeera. So I'm just curious. I see David Love is an African American, and VJ seems to be someone of Indian descent, or you know what they call Desi. You know, the Indian, Pakistani,
yes,
Bengali. So just that wording
he
really
might be a
jumped out
Dalit.
for me.
He might be a Dalit, or his parents or grandparents were Dalits. Shout out to the Dalits of India.
Yeah. There's another part of this article too. Since you bring it up, I didn't want to know how much time you want to take with it, but you know, I have a habit of trying to look at some of the embedded articles as well, and they did a really good job going through, because I've looked at a lot of articles off of Twitter where people have tried to say that this is no longer going on. And I finally started looking through, and I can tell you, the computer has made it really easy for any corporation to basically keep people in the dark about what's going on. Because Unicorn manages 83 factories. That's 83. You think about that, it's 50 states. But they manage 83 factories with more than 12,000 prison laborers who earn as little as 23 cents an hour. Now, and this is from 2013. So there's no telling. And I know personally here in Virginia that there are several local places that actually send some of their product into the prison system, have it worked on, and then it's returned back to them on a regular basis. So that's kind of like outsourcing to the prison to do certain work. And I only found that out because I happen to know a couple of electricians who are actually doing some of the subcontract work to modify the prison, and they brought it up. So they go out of their way not to make these contracts very public. So my point is, There are a lot of prisoners that go through that system that don't even realize what they're doing. It's just a job to them. They have no idea what it is they're producing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
that's a great point there.
Well, let's move on to our next segment as we try to get it all in. I'm mixing it up. We usually would say these segments to the end, but I've been mixing it up the past couple of shows, or this might be the second show I'm doing this, but just trying to ensure we get these segments in. So at this point, we are going to take a look at our history in rebellion, taking a look at that in the segment For Freedom's Sake, a history of rebellion. As I stated at the beginning of the broadcast, Panama has an extensive history of rebellions by enslaved Africans going back to the 16th century. We will share some of what we found. And a side note there, same time the English was landing and colonizing, in the 1600s, North America was known as North America continent today, and enslaving Africans. Spanish was doing just another set of Europeans doing the same thing in South America and Central America. I believe Panama's in Central America. But so let's take a look at this little bit of information I was able to dig up about the history of rebellion against slavery in Panama. Panama has an extensive history of slave rebellions going back to, I hate the way people word stuff sometimes, has a history of rebellions against slavery going back to the 16th century. Victims of slavery were brought to the Isthmus from many regions in Africa, including the modern-day countries of the Congo, Senegal, Guinea, and Mozambique. Immediately before their arrival on shore or very soon after, before their arrival on shore or very soon after, many enslaved Africans revolted against their captors and participated in mass maroonage or desertion. I don't know how you're going to desert slavery. That's usually a term for the military. But shout out to Russell Maroon Schultz. All right, shout out to you, brother, political prisoner. And look up the history of the Maroons. These are people who did escape, Africans, and they fought guerrilla warfare. So the free Africans founded communities in the forests and mountains, organized guerrilla bands known as the Cimarrones. They began a long guerrilla war against the Spanish conquistadors, sometimes in conjunction with nearby indigenous communities like the Kuna and the Guaymi. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. But despite massacres by the Spanish, the rebels fought until the Spanish crown was forced. Again, they fought them and made them. See, we even have here stories like that that's hidden here in the so-called United States. You look up the Seminoles and the
throughout the Carolinas and Florida,
South Carolina, all of that. Yeah, they fought them to a standstill often and forced these people. But we don't get Hollywood stories and movies made about this. We were lucky to even get the 13th, which was a documentary on the 13th Amendment. Before that, it was just Slavery by Another Name, the book and the PBS film. So, but these are great stories, man, full of drama, full of real life characters that you could bring to the screen while also educating people about real history instead of this made up Spielberg history about Lincoln abolishing some victims of slavery and what have you, and lionizing him. Let me continue, but it said that the rebels fought until the Spanish crown was forced to concede to treaties that granted the Africans a life without Spanish violence, another word for terrorism, and incursions. The leaders of the guerrilla revolts included Felipilo Bayano, Juan D. Diaso, Domingo Congo, Anton Mandinga, and Louis D. Mozambique. So those were the leaders of the highly successful, revolt against slavery in the area known today as Panama. And we salute you from New Abolitionist Radio. Salute.
Absolutely.
Any comments, guys, on that story? Very inspirational.
Very inspirational, and I can tell you, since we started this, I started digging around. There's a lot we don't get in American history. I just should tell you three quick ones that I saw on a satellite when I say 1811, German coast uprising in the territory of New Orleans. I had no idea about that, and I picked through history. But once we started getting on this, the other one I did know about, Denmark Vesey rebelled in South Carolina. Another one, Madison, Washington, during the Creole case in the 19th century in the United. All of these are U.S. in southern territories in the U.S. That are slave rebellions. And I keep remembering growing up, the old folks used to tell me all the time, boy, you ain't gonna get that news in that newspaper or on that television. They don't want you to know how many of our people was doing what they had to do to survive. That's why they keep us corralled. And I believe them. Picking through some of these courthouses in the South now, you'll find that a whole lot more rebellion went on than what American wants to tell you in a history book.
That's right.
It is. Very true. Keep your mouth on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done, brother.
No, I am.
I always, when I hear these stories, I always call to mind, the saying, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. So, I don't know how the vast majority of people think this is going to happen, but, demands are going to have to be made. There's not going to be some sit down at the table, let's shake hands and agree, sing kumbaya type of thing. It's not going to go down like that. I mean, we have our legal procedures that we're going to be going through as far as going to the courts and everything, but it may come a time where there's actually going to have to be bloodshed, and, maybe in our lifetime, maybe not in our lifetime,
Wow.
And you look at every rebellion, every uprising, no one ever just said, okay, you're free. Yeah, you're free. No, it's always involved some form of conflict, physical conflict. So that's always something that has to be in our mindset because, as the saying is, give me liberty or give me death. So people are going to have to start thinking along those lines that, it may come a time where people will actually have to lay down their lives for this. I mean, all three of us are U.S. veterans, so we know what it's like to be on the front lines, and people are going to have to come out of that comfort zone. Right now it's just, we have our marches, we have our rallies, we're going to go to the courts, but who knows where it's going to be 20 years from now or 5 years from now or, 2 years from now. We don't know. So that's always something that it's always about history. If we're going to speak about history, that's, and going to your point, Otis, that's probably a reason why a lot of these rebellions aren't spoken of, because if we start learning about all of these rebellions that happened in the Western Hemisphere, and then we start hearing about the others, like the Zan's rebellion, when, the Africans did the uprising in the India region.
Yes.
Of how many 500,000 people fought for their freedom over there, through bloodshed. So when we start hearing this stuff, they know what it would start doing to our psyche. That we're going to start saying, well, look, that's what worked for them, so they can't reinforce that. So, of course, they're going to keep telling us, oh, why don't you be more like MLK? Because that's what they want. They want us to be passive. They want us to, just do sit-ins and take knees. That's all they want out of us.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put passive on MLK. because that was a tactic, and those people were not organized.
I didn't mean that as a slight on Martin Luther King.
Yeah, I know you didn't mean that way.
People, but they don't understand that. Hey, MLK, you know, that was the tactic he used. This thing was let's
expose
show the
them.
world what they're doing.
He wants to expose them. I mean, I've read about it in my media research. They talked about and strategized. There's cameras now. We got international media. Let's get these images out here. And this may sound cruel, but at the same time, like you said earlier yourself, our people who did what they had to do to survive. And so to let the world know that these images that you seeing that show like America is so great and it's the land of free, that has taken in many and provided great opportunities, and really not showing you black folks. Martin Luther King and them was like, let's send out these high school students and these young college students that's brave enough to go out there and let firemen hit them with hoses and let police sick dogs on them and bust them in the head. And, you know, John Lewis, again, you can't take that away from him, but I think all them blows to the head have affected his decisions today. But you know, he still gets credit for what he did as a young man with all those other young people. And so that sort of stuff, when people try to play down marches and rallies and stuff, you're not think big picture in how revolutions are sparked by mass demonstrations. That's agitation. Right. That's agitation. Exactly. You're not going to get no change if you don't throw pebbles in the pond to create ripples, and who knows what can come about when a butterfly flaps its wings.
You have to do something to stop the machine from rolling along. I'd like to say, Scotty, you talk about it regularly, but the part you talked about Congress coming together and saying it's a seminal moment for Congress to come together and try to force the president to come out against white supremacy. Ironically, ESPN is trying to censor a black female reporter because she came on Twitter on her personal time and said the man is a white supremacist. He surrounded himself by white supremacists. Now, this is the kind of thing that gets me. I already sent out one to Van Jones and a couple of other people saying, how can you jump on the bandwagon for all of these other things, like what's wrong with Colin Kaepernick, but you're not on the bandwagon for this sister that stood up and said the same thing that you've been beating around the bush for since January when Trump got signed in. When he was sworn in, you kept talking about he's going to unleash the people, he's going to stir them up, he's going to embolden them. She comes out and just goes on Twitter and goes straight out on him because somebody came at her talking about it, and she just let it out. Yeah, the man.
She ain't saying no different than Congress. She ain't saying nothing no different than the U.S. Congress. Republicans and Democrats are saying to him through that resolution.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But people now, the conservative people, a couple of them, are trying to mount an effort to get her fired. As a matter of fact, the press secretary, Huckabee's daughter, came out and said it's a fireable offense. The White House is trying to get her fired for calling a racist president.
Come on now. Now they call Barack Obama worse. So that.
Oh yeah, but I'm telling you, this is true. I'm upset because I keep telling people that's when you should tweet bomb. The people I'm talking to on Facebook every day, I'm saying that's when you should stop putting out these kitty porn and dog puppy things and these little memes. You should send a tweet to them. Everybody should load up ESPN.
I already tweeted them. I tweeted them last night.
And flood them.
Yeah,
exactly. But nobody wants to do it in mass.
Yeah, I tweeted them last night. Sometimes though sometimes those things can go viral on their own. Like that hashtag vets for Kaepernick. I swear, y'all, I probably started that because I did put that out there as soon as he did what he did because I knew the standard procedure was, he's disrespecting the flag, he disrespecting the veterans, and okay, I'm a vet, and what? Right. Veterans for Kaepernick. Yes, because
I kept trying to push it every time I saw it from you. You and I are one of the few people that keep using these hashtags, but you know, that I see in my stream. But I do it too, Scotty. But that's my point. I said people come on and they want to give you some old fluff stuff, but they don't want to do what they can. I'm saying
we have to be educated on that stuff, though.
250 of them send that. It propels it. It gets her message across.
Right. And I'll also make mental note to include that in my presentation at Chronic this weekend. But we do need to move on, fellas, as we have limited time. We got about 8 minutes till the top of the hour when we will take our station identification. But we do have a caller. Brother Braggs, thank you for chiming in to New Abolitionist Radio. Go ahead and speak your piece, sir.
Peace, gentlemen. I just wanted to chime in with this, man. All we doing is watching the Nazi program in effect. Propaganda at its best, you know what I'm saying? The main thing is so none of the people have any idea of whatever is going on because they hit you with so much propaganda. The other thing, the storm in Houston, that's a whole big thing. You got to realize who's in Houston. When I say Nazis, check the Bush family, check their pedigree. Check the government just like they don't care. Then go back in history and check all through history how they did us in history. They didn't care about us then. They really don't care about us now. This is our country, and they're trying to take it. They need to clear you off the land. They're going to clear you off the land by any means possible, HARP and whatever else they can do to move you off the land. That's all I have to say, gentlemen. Peace.
You're speaking truth.
All right. Thank you, Brother Braggs. And can we, let's go. We got another caller, area code 414. Damn it. I muted myself. Area, where's that background noise coming from? Area code 414, you need to call us from a regular phone. We was getting nothing but a high-pitched whining noise. I don't know what type of device you're trying to use to call in. But no, I heard you saying hello faintly, but no, you got a high-pitched whining noise. So try a different device and give us a call back. Again, you can chime in at 866-510-9025, 866-510-9025. Will one of you fellas take our next story, which is Virginia tops nation in sending students to cops courts? Where does your state rank? Which is from publicintegrity.org.
Go ahead, Yusuf.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it again because I had it open. Man.
I've got it if you want.
Well, Otis, you take it and he could get the next story because we'll do our next segment. We'll do our next segment.
Criminalizing kids. Virginia tops the nation in sending students to cops, courts. Where does your state rank? How kicking a trash can become a criminal offense for a sixth grader. Caleb Moon Robinson, who is diagnosed as autistic, had barely started sixth grade last fall in Lynchburg, Virginia, when a school resource officer filed charges against him. Caleb was charged with disorderly conduct for kicking over a trash can and then with assault on a police officer because he struggled to break free when a cop grabbed him. The Center for Public Integrity analyzed national data and found that Virginia schools refer more students to law enforcement than any other state, and that nationally schools refer Black and special needs kids to cops and courts disproportionately. Diagnosed as autistic, Caleb was being scolded for misbehavior one day and kicked the trash can at Lakehorn Middle School in Lynchburg in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A police officer assigned to the school witnessed the tantrum, filed a disorderly conduct charge against the sixth grader in juvenile court. Just weeks later in November, Caleb, who is African American, disobeyed a new rule. This one just for him, that he wait while other kids left class. The principal sent the same school officer to get him. He grabbed me and tried to take me to the office, said Caleb, a small, bespectacled boy who enjoys science. I started pushing him away. He slammed me down and he handcuffed me. Now, I hope you caught the part that they made a rule just for him. He had to wait until the other kids left before he could leave class after an incident. In the incident report, a teacher confirmed that the officer spoke to Caleb, then grabbed him around the chest, and that Caleb cursed and struggled. School officials won't comment on this case, but say that police in schools are crucial to providing a safe atmosphere, protecting against outside threats. Stacy Doss, Kayla's mother and the daughter of the police officer herself, was outraged. Educators stood by, she said, while the cop took her son in handcuffs to juvenile court. The officer filed a second disorderly conduct against him and also submitted another charge, a very grown-up charge for a small boy, felony assault on a police officer. The charge was filed, Doss said. The officer told her because Kayla fought back. You can read that article. I'll post it up on my page too. But I think that's enough of it for people to understand what's going on. I happen to be here in Virginia, but I have a son that's in Oklahoma, and they happen to be the top two states for black boys, black youth going to jail. Any comments?
Yeah, hearing that case reminds me of the one of the young gentleman down in New Mexico that was burping in gym class.
Yes.
To where he ended up becoming arrested, and ironically, that was one where Judge Gorsuch was actually one of the judges on the case when it got to the appellate division. And although they upheld the decision, Judge Gorsuch did a dissent. The court upheld the arrest, stating that, they kind of like laid the blame on the New Mexico legislature because of such a vague statute within the it says that no person shall willfully interfere with the educational process of any public or private school by committing, threatening to commit, or inciting others to commit any act which would disrupt, impair, interfere with, or obstruct the lawful mission, process, procedures, or functions of a public or private school. And Neil Gorsuch was basically saying, look, that's very vague, because the intent, and he cited several other states and certain federal statutes which said, the intent is really talking about someone. He gave an example of someone calling in a bomb threat.
Right.
That's disrupting the school. He said children acting up in class is as old as sliced bread. Basically, that's something that it's going to forever happen.
It's part of the process.
Yeah, it's going to happen to the end of time. Children are going to disrupt class. So if that was the case, you'd be locking children up all over the country every single day. And there was another case a few years ago where a child was arrested for forgetting their homework. What they're doing is they're criminalizing things that, we got sent to the principal's office for, or we got detention for, or worse, we get a 1-day suspension to where our parents have to bring us back to school. But now they're criminalizing.
Oh, you had additional homework or something like that.
Yeah, you have to do an extra book report or something. Now, for the smallest little things, they're criminalizing it, and of course, fights in school now turn into assault charges. Again, something else that children are always fight, because they're children, so they don't know conflict resolution yet. And one of the things they're going to do is fight. So they're criminalizing, and of course, we know how it ties in with the 13th Amendment. We know about the school, the prison pipeline. So we know the ultimate goal behind all of this. And again, that's another reason why, because we know child labor is very rampant all across the globe. And child labor is a big deal. So
you don't even have to use them as labor, though. Just their bodies are commodities. Just housing them and warehousing them, like those people were doing in Pennsylvania with those two judges in that kiddie detention facility, as it was named, something to that effect, like they was some kind of daycare center. But yeah, they don't even have to put them to work to make money. See, that's the thing about the new slavery. They figured out a way to even, make money without even putting you to work. Just putting you in a cage.
Just having the body there generates money.
And as you keep saying, Scott, it's compounded because not only do they make money for housing you, but they're also going to make money for you to communicate with your family. Then they also make money off you buying the necessities because they're feeding you food that's killing you. And then on top of that, they limit your future for the rest of your life because you can't get schooling, you can't get public grants, you can't get any welfare assistance, and you can't vote.
Right.
So you're permanently anchored in the possibility of being rotated right back into that system again.
Well,
and,
we do.
Another thing that's happening with the youth, they see it as like a form of rebellion. Everybody tells them how
it's glorified through the media, man. It's glorified through the media. Yeah.
And so when they come home now, in their mind, it's it wasn't bad. It ain't no big deal.
Yeah, but they ain't telling you about them 20 times they got raped. But yeah, okay.
About exactly the abuse, the sexual abuse, and the.
There's never any talk about that. I mean, you used to hear guys. I remember, like back in the 80s when I was constantly getting in trouble. You hear guys say, "Oh, such and such jail is sweet." They used to talk about different prisons in New York. Yeah, man. If you go up north, you want to go to such and such spot, man. It's sweet there.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
I laugh at it. Sad.
It's rape, man.
You know what I'm saying? That we would literally, guys were saying stuff like that. It's sweet there. But they were talking about, certain jails. They have tractor trailer school. They have all these. One jail had a bowling alley in it. They were telling me about.
Yeah.
So in your mind, you're like, hey, it ain't so bad. So maybe I want to go out here and try to sling this crack. Because, I'm just going to go to a spot like that where it's sweet.
Yeah.
That was
I hope it ain't nobody out there believing that. But listen, guys, we're overdue for our break, so we're going to take our station identification break. You're listening to Black Talk Radio Network. This is New Abolitionist Radio, where we focus on legalized slavery and human trafficking by way of the 13th Amendment. I know it's cruel, it's vicious, it's inhumane to even tell a lie like the 13th Amendment and perpetrate that fraud on the entire world. Even making movies. Shame on you, Spielberg. Making movies telling this lie that you abolish slavery when, if people just was in front of them and interpret it correctly, then they'll come to the same conclusion. We'll be back after these quick messages. To the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com. And welcome back to New Abolitionist Radio. Our abolitionist in profile tonight, I'll go into that segment. If one of the fellas, if y'all want to choose a story that y'all want to go into after I do our abolitionist in profile tonight, which is connected to Panama, which we featured in our For Freedom's Sake History of Rebellion segment. We are looking at one of the men that was mentioned, Bayano, also known as Bolano or Villano, who was an African enslaved by Spaniards in the mid-1500s, who led the biggest revolt against slavery in the 16th century in present-day Panama. So let me just pull up his profile quickly here. Let's see. Again, he was enslaved by Spaniards, and he led the biggest victim of slavery revolt of the 16th century in Panama. He was captured from the Mandinka community in West Africa. It has been argued that he and his comrades were Muslim. I don't see what difference it makes, but anyway, different tales tell of their revolt in 1552, beginning either on the ship en route or after landing in Panama's Darien province along its modern-day border with Colombia. Escaped victims of slavery, known as rebels, also known as Cimarrones, set up autonomous regions behind the enemy lines, man. They were fully functional. Man, this is great, man. Set up autonomous regions known as palenques, many of which successfully fended off Spanish control for centuries, using guerrilla war in alliances with pirates or indigenous nations who were in similar circumstances. King Bayano's forces numbered between 4 and 1,200 Cimarrones, depending upon different sources, and set up a palenque known as, Roncancholón, near modern-day Chepo River, also known as Rio Bayano. They named it after him. They fought their guerrilla war for over 5 years while building their community. The account written by Dr. Abdul Kabir Mohammed, based on the belief that Bayano's followers were Mandinka, and as Mandinka had been influenced by Islam, argued that they created democratic councils and built mosques. However, the most important primary source, written in 1581 by Pedro de Aguado, devotes space to their religious life and describes the activities of a bishop who guided the community in prayer, baptized them, and delivered sermons in a manner that Aguado believed to be essentially Christian. Could have been a mixture. Okay, Christianity, indigenous Africans, because they revolted as soon as they got over there. So, but again, it doesn't matter. Bayano, not in the grand scheme of things, but Bayano gained truces with Panama's colonial governor Pedro de Ursua, but Ursua subsequently captured the guerrilla leader and sent him to Peru and then to Spain, where he died. Bayano's revolt coincided with others, including those of Pilo and Luis de Mozambique. Bayano's name has become immortal in the Panamanian consciousness through the naming of a major river, a lake, a valley, a dam, and several companies which have been named after him. And New Abolitionist Radio salutes freedom fighter Bayano.
That's right. Salute.
Salute.
Again, if I had the resources to produce independent films, I don't. So just like Netflix, y'all did the 13th based off the fact that the 13th Amendment. Throw some money at these abolitionist stories. We've been telling them for 5 years. I think they'll be blockbusters. Guys, let me toss it to the guys real quick, but we do have a caller that we want to be able to jump in, unless y'all want me to go to caller first.
Netflix doesn't want to be blackballed. If they start doing abolitionist movies, they'll be blackballed.
614, your mic is open. Did you want to share something with us tonight on New Abolitionist Radio?
Yes, I did. How's everybody doing this evening?
We're doing well. Please share your name. I'm sorry, I should have asked, but thank you for joining us. What's your name?
My name is Adrian Hood, and I am from Columbus, Ohio.
Thanks for calling in, Adrian. What's on your mind tonight?
You're welcome. I just wanted to call in and share a little bit of what's been going on in Columbus over the last few days. Actually, for myself, it started last year, June 6, 2016. Columbus police murdered my oldest son, and the officers, of course, were not indicted. But on that day of that decision, I did tell the media and the city of Columbus that they had just unleashed some monsters. And one of the officers that murdered my son, not even 2 weeks later, was caught on camera. The first on-camera incident that we had with Columbus police stomping the handcuffed young man on the concrete. And I'm sure that you probably have seen the video circulating over the last couple of days of the incident now that it's taking place with Columbus police beating this young man in the convenience store. And now they have him in jail, and from what I've been told, he has not gotten the medical attention that he needs to receive. And so today, our chief of police makes this uncaring video that she has now viewed body cam footage from one of the officers, and here's an officer blatantly saying that what he would have done was choke this man, and when he started drooling, he would have then put handcuffs on him. So I bring that up to say she made a statement about being appalled about the comments that this officer made, and still not addressing being appalled about how these officers beat this young man down the way that they did, and the things that they were saying to him, you know, all the time of this incident going on. None of that was appalling, but what the officer said on camera, she found appalling, and took his badge and his gun today. But yet and still, these officers, they have said, their FOP has said that this has fallen in line with them being, with the legal excessive force that is in their policy. And this is what we have going on in Columbus,
That's slave catching. You know, do you have to use violence sometimes to subdue your victims of slavery? And I mean, I'm glad she said what she said, because she let you know straight up where she coming from. So you know what type of monster you dealing with. That she's more appalled at language than she is in action, because our guidelines say you can be potential, victims of slavery. And again, condolences to you on your loss. I do remember Max interviewing you, bringing you on New Abolitionist Radio. So condolences to you on that. But I have not seen this latest video. I'm gonna be honest, I get a lot of stuff sent to me, but I just don't really have a stomach to watch our people get. I'll just read about it. I'll read, people's descriptions, but I don't like watching them like lynching videos, like snuff films, but I do understand the importance of documenting these videos. But once they've been documented, I don't need to watch them, because some sick people out there, they get off on that type of stuff. But again, that's what it takes, though, I guess, to expose the various elements of 21st century slavery and human trafficking. And brutality and murder has always been a part of that. Guys, did y'all want to comment on anything? Were you aware of this incident in Columbus that she's speaking on?
I'd like to ask her, just out of curiosity, is this the one where they accosted the young man at the ice cooler in front of the place and then followed him back in, two black cops?
No, this is actually another incident. This incident just happened on September the 2nd. So this is yet another. I believe the one that you're referring to was a couple of months back, and they actually ended up arresting that young man on an old they said on an old ticket, and the ticket was not even valid. He had paid that. So really it was just about inconveniencing him because he actually stood up to the police officers.
Right.
This attack on this young man the other day, these were all plainclothes officers. We don't know what took place outside of the convenience store, and the owner of the convenience store, the young man that was recording it, the owner told the police that this young man was recording and actually tried to get him to turn his camera off, but he refused to. So the community is trying to come together now.
I hope y'all boycotting that store.
That store.
Yes. If you're going to aid and abet slavery and the brutality that goes along with it, and justify members of the community, because a store, we're told that these businesses are part of our community. Well, if you're going to support slavery and the beat down of members of the community, then perhaps you need to relocate your store, take your business elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yes. So is this the one, there's a young lady, Hannah, did y'all go before the Columbus City Hall
the
or
city
something?
Council?
Yes, I saw some of that.
Hannah X.
Video he was posting.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. I'm out of town for a couple of months on business, but I did get to see some of the footage from that. But yes, that is where they went to City Council, and they will be returning again to City Council on this upcoming Monday to get a response for the demands that they gave this past Monday.
Great.
Yeah, shout out to Hannah X, who is an abolitionist, and she joined us there in Washington, D.C., also called into the program, been a guest herself several times. Well, we do need to continue on, get to the rest of our segments. Was there anything else you wanted to share?
No, not at this time. I just wanted to, make the community aware of what was going on, and I appreciate you guys taking my call.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for calling in so that we can document this news, because I had not heard that. But we do need to move to our next segment. Do you guys have a story? One of you guys have a story you want to share?
I just wanted to briefly touch on the Herman Bell situation.
Okay, go right ahead.
Political prisoner Herman Bell was assaulted the other day, viciously assaulted by 5 to 6 guards. And of course, in turn, they say that he assaulted them.
And he's an elderly man, so let's put that out here. I know he don't look his age, but Herman's not like no young 20-something-year-old that he gonna be trying to fight no 5 or 6 police.
Yeah, 69 years old. And he was just days away from getting, a contact visit with his wife, something that he hasn't had in over 2 years. Not to mention that he's, coming up for the parole board soon. So for whatever reason they chose, I guess they just didn't want him to have this visit. So they decided to, attack him. His page mentions, he said, while being escorted by a guard back to his housing unit, a guard struck him in the face, causing his glasses to drop to the floor. Guard pushed Herman against the wall. Herman stumbled and fell to the ground. Then this guard and 5 or 6 others started kicking and punching him. One kneed him in his chest, causing 2 cracked ribs. One of the guards took Herman's head and slammed it very hard in the pavement 3 times. And behind all of this, they put him in the isolation unit and left him there for hours with no medical attention. Then he was eventually taken to the prison infirmary, where x-rays have confirmed that he has fractured ribs. His left eye is damaged from the mace and the kicks and punches. His bruises all on his body, headaches. and he has a possible concussion. So that's something that we wanted to. Oh, and another thing that we also have to keep in mind, he's gone over 20 years without any type of infraction. So they want us to believe, out of the blue, he decided, you know what, let me get into a fight with the police today.
Right.
So just putting it out there. His family is asking. Let me just put this last piece out there. His family is asking for people to send him letters and get well cards. You know, he can be reached as Herman Bell, 79C 0262. It's 5 Points Correctional Facility because he's in the box now, and that's 6600 State Route 96, caller box 119, Romulus, ROMULUS, New York 14541. So everyone, you know, we have to keep in contact with them. We have to, all of our political prisoners, because they're actually trying to murder them off. We know what happened with Yogi Pinnell, and so we have to keep an eye on them because they're trying to get rid of many of them now.
Now, also, it should be mentioned.
I think this was an assassination attempt.
Well, it should also be. It also should be mentioned that Herman Bell is still active with his writing in journalism, just like Mumia is still active. Absolutely. And what have you, because there's a blog that's being maintained for him that contains his writings, and he comes out with these blog posts, from time to time. So definitely got to keep an eye on him. Again, this is just still slavery. Slavery's brutal. There's nothing humane about slavery. So you have these animals of people who believe in practicing slavery against human beings. They are the ones that, man, I tell you, man. So, and then what frustrates me is I feel so helpless. I feel so helpless, man, because I don't have the resources where we could put into their legal defense funds or hiring people, So that's what hurts me. All I can do is let people know what's going on with them. So our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family.
I see in that article where he even had his lawyer to make sure to look at his hands and stuff to show that he made no attempt to fight back with these people. But the other part is political prisoners. They don't want these. If like you said, they maintain on their blogs. With the advent of technology now, they don't want these people out here free. They can basically control and constrict them while they're still behind bars. And let's face it, if he's 8th time for parole in February of 2018,
his wife.
And what I have not heard is a statement from the DOC, and I believe he's in New York, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are they saying? Did they even put out a press release saying that it's under investigation? Had these officers been suspended? What's going on?
No, because their take is he initiated that was the force required to counteract his aggression. They're trying to say he was the aggressor.
So there's no investigation. Was there an investigation, or did they just come out and say that? See, these are questions that are not being answered.
It's the typical, because the area where it happened, there were no cameras and no inmates in the area.
Okay.
So
they did an investigation and they concluded that it was a by the book.
There's no investigation. They'll say that there's going to be an investigation, but we know they're not going to do an investigation.
Yeah, I know that, but I want to know what they're saying, though. I need to know what they're saying so that we can report accurate information.
I've seen no official word on it yet.
I haven't either.
I'll dig later.
Really? I mean, really, there's really... Let me...
Because if people complain, if enough people complain, it has to be investigated. They still have procedures and what have you, and so it has to be investigated if people complain, and we can't control the outcome. often, you know, they always cover up stuff, but you still have to document the abuse. So, I mean, I'm assuming that somebody filed a complaint, and I'm assuming the proper procedure is for it to be investigated. When did this happen?
Oh, this recently happened on September 5th.
September 5th, yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, Scott, it says clearly that the man has not had a disciplinary infraction in 20 years. 20 years. He's not ever had a disciplinary infraction. And all of a sudden, this happens when he's supposed to be having a 3-day family visit with his wife in a few days, which means it would have been 7th, 8th, or 9th that he was about to have a 3-day visit. So this is purely to be vindictive and to punish him.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it.
See, these are the people that I don't know why they are allowed. Why do they exist on this planet, man? You know, again, if I was to take a job on a prison plantation like that, which I would not, but man, what kind of punk are you that you would beat up an old man, and not just beat up an old man, but gang up on an old man? This elderly 69-year-old man, just so what? You can get him thrown in the hole, inflict some physical harm on him, break his ribs and all of that, prevent him from meeting his wife and seeing his wife. You got to be a straight up piece of you know what, man. You know, that I don't want to say on these airways. If I was to meet you overhear you in a bar bragging about some stuff like that, I will be stalking you the rest of that night, just waiting on an opportunity to get you in the bathroom by yourself, and me and my buddies come in there and put a beat down on you. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Sad.
Yeah, I'm looking at multiple sites. There's no mention of any type of investigation, and just the mere fact that he's sitting in the box charged with assault on staff sounds like they've concluded their investigation.
Yes. Five guards to take down a 69-year-old prisoner.
Man, these people are terrorists, man.
Get there, he said.
Well, we might as well go ahead and take our next break, and we have one more segment, which is, I believe, well, 2 more segments actually. Yousef, are you ready to do the constitutional piece, or do you want me to go ahead and do the Underground Railroad Rider of the 21st century?
Do the Underground Railroad first.
All right, so if you'll get ready to do your constitutional piece after that. And we are going to take a break right now, though. That's what we are about to do. You're listening to New Abolitionist Radio on the Black Talk Radio Network. We broadcast every Wednesday night, God willing, at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, going up to just about 9:50. Keep it locked all day, especially on Wednesdays. We real busy, and we are trying to bring more live streaming to you. But Wednesday nights, man, we have full afternoon and evening program for you. So stick around for Mind, Body, and Spirit Radio later tonight. We'll be back on the other side. In 2008, the Black Talk Media Project launched the digital radio platform Black Talk Radio Network, the first such platform created to serve the black community specifically. Black Talk Radio Network has grown with a variety of radio hosts, digital radio stations, and podcasters. Web analytics say Black Talk Radio, the platform, has an online reach that ranks it among the top independent black media platforms in the world. All of this is possible because of financial contributions to the nonprofit Black Talk Media Project. If you love the work we do and the voices and perspectives we bring to you every day, make a donation today to ensure that Black Talk Radio is here in the future. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. And welcome back to New Abolitionist Radio on this Wednesday night, September the 13th, 2017, as we enter into the last half hour of our broadcast. Have Otis and Brother Yusef riding shotgun with me, and I do want to move into our segment on the underground railroad writer of the 21st century. We want to inform you about this story. Man, I hate some of these websites, man. Excuse me if I seem distracted. So yeah, tonight's story we're focusing on a man who's Leander. Man, who are y'all webmasters? Andrew Leander Wilson, a man who spent more than 32 years behind bars in a murder case, was a free man after Los Angeles County prosecutors agreed that he did not get a fundamentally fair trial. What does that mean, fundamentally fair trial? Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Laura F. Praver granted a request to vacate Andrew Leander Wilson's November 1986 conviction for the robbery and murder of Christopher Hansen and dismissed the case against the 62-year-old man. So he was what, 31? He was 31 when he got wrongfully convicted and sent off into slavery. Wilson was anxious. I'm sorry?
I was saying right in the prime of his life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wilson was anxious and excited before finally walking free Thursday afternoon. He said he couldn't sleep, and last night he was bothering everybody because he was waiting for this day. It's a day with so much, but one of the most joyous moments was meeting his eldest grandchild for the first time. It's unexplainable, Wilson said. I can't explain to see everybody at one time. It's nice. I'm happy that I'm at the end of it now. So he talking like, these visits are important, and you not being able to see people because of distance and also their ability to afford to be able to travel and all of that. That's why what they did to Herman Bell was so atrocious, man. Come on, right before he supposed to meet with his wife, So he reunited with his daughter and met his granddaughter, one of 5 grandchildren who flew into Los Angeles from their home in Michigan for this day. That's a waste of time being bitter, he said. No anger, he said, toward a justice system that essentially failed the now 62-year-old man. 32 years, 3 months, and 14 days has been that long, Wilson said. Wilson spent all that time behind bars for a murder for which he was wrongfully convicted in 1984. Now, he had maintained his innocence from the day he was arrested in 84. He has never wavered and never stopped fighting to prove his innocence, said his attorney, Paula Mitchell of Loyola Law School's Los Angeles Project for the Innocent. Numerous due process violations that recently came to light show conclusively that Mr. Wilson did not receive a fair trial, and he is elated. He is so glad this is finally over. When he first contacted our office, one of the things he said to us is, this whole ordeal has been a nightmare for my entire family. So We want to welcome him to freedom. Welcome, sir, to freedom. Please get some help for your traumatic stress and apparent Stockholm syndrome. And I'm saying that with all seriousness and no mocking. Whenever I hear these victims of slavery come out and say, I'm not bitter or anything, they say that because hate can eat you up. Bitterness, some people can't handle that. It is an emotion that can take a physical toll. But at the same time, you know, I can control my emotions and still be mad at you for enslaving me. Okay, I can be angry without it physically affecting me, and I'm definitely bitter. And yeah, Otis.
I'd like to say this because I do a lot of presence on Facebook and Twitter, but I want to put this on the airways. This is my problem with people that claim to be for DACA because it breaks up families. If you go a little further in the article you just read, Wilson plans to return to St. Louis to spend time with his mother, Margie Davis, who will turn 97 coming up this May. And that's 32 years. At least he got out before his mother died. So many of them lose their parents and loved ones before they ever get set free.
Absolutely.
But they don't think about breaking up black families.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole immigration issue, like, where are the safe cities? What do they call these sanctuary cities where we get freedom from slavery? Yeah, where the sanctuary cities for freedom from slavery, where we don't see the type of slave catching that we see, where you're not arresting people for pot, you haven't criminalized all this nonviolent people activity. Where are these sanctuary cities for the victims of slavery? But you're shielding them from slavery. You know, the private prisons are full of immigrants, undocumented and what have you. It is slavery. We do recognize that, and I stand in solidarity with them. But I'm talking to American politicians. Where are sanctuary cities where we not getting gunned down? You know, like the young man, the young man in Columbus. We heard from his mother earlier, Adrian. Where are safe zones? Where are sanctuary cities? They don't exist. So, yourself, you have any comments on this before you can go right into your section on the Constitution?
I mean, just briefly, because you know my stance is always, there's never any mention on going after the people who wronged this man.
Right.
They committed a crime against this man.
They have immunity, government servants.
They committed a crime against him.
Yes, they did. I agree.
His life, 32 years of his life.
Right. Hey, one story that I did not share that I want to get in real quick, submitted by a listener. The death of a El Paso County jail inmate is under investigation. Colorado Springs police are investigating an officer-involved death of an El Paso County jail inmate who was in the custody of the sheriff's office. On Tuesday, police identified the inmate as 40-year-old Colorado Springs resident Eliezer Torado Ortiz. Ortiz died on September the 7th following his arrest at Executive Towers at whatever the address is. So I just wanted to share that real quick. Yourself, if you want to go into your segment on the Constitution.
Yes, sir. So, of course, we're always going to read it first. If you give me 1 second. 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2, Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Those are the 47 words of the 13th Amendment. And we know that this exception clause is the root of the problems that we see all across the United States. One issue that I wanted to touch on this evening is not now, won't do this to me now. One of the issues I wanted to touch on is the Eighth Amendment, just the first portion of the Eighth Amendment, because the cruel and unusual punishment portion, that's a show within itself. But the other portion of the Eighth Amendment, where it says the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution says excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. That's the entire amendment. I wanted to focus on the excessive bail portion of it and the excessive fines. So they go hand in hand when we really show how it ties together. So one of the ways that they're perpetuating this 13th Amendment is we know that they have these quotas. We've heard from officers, we've seen other officers come out and speak on it. They have these quotas to lock people up. There's an article that I have, one of the articles I sent you earlier about the bail trap. A guy is standing outside of a convenience store with one of his buddies, and he has a soda can and a straw in his hand. He just bought it from the store. And undercover officers come up to him, and they ask him, what do you have on you? And he's like, nothing. Ask him and his friend. Search the friend, find nothing, search him. And they arrest him, and he's like, what are you arresting me for? And he says, drug paraphernalia. So when they get in front of the judge, the drug paraphernalia that he had was the straw. The officer is saying, based in his report, he says, based on his training and experience, we say that all the time, and this is what these officers say, based on his training and experience, straws are used to hide drugs within them. So he's calling that the drug paraphernalia. And because this guy had a record, he was given a bail. He was given a $1,500 bail behind this. And so we know how that goes. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. $1,500 is a lot of money to come up with. And he even says in the article, he said, had it been like $100, he would have been able to bail out. He said there's no way he can get $1,500. We know what happened with Khalif Browder. His bail was $3,000. Sandra Bland's bail was $500. So the bail, they're setting bails, and I mean, these are low bails compared to some of the bails that they have out there. People are getting arrested for, having burglary tools, which is a high-class misdemeanor, but still getting $100,000 no cash bail and no 10%. So basically, they're going to be held hostage and held for ransom until they basically cop out. So this is what they're doing to a lot of the people. They're holding them hostage on these bails, and they also do the same thing with fines. If a person has an unpaid fine, obviously, most of the time, the person didn't pay the fine because they just don't have the money. So they'll arrest them and hold them until that fine is paid. The bail will be the amount of the fine. And we know a lot of times they're giving outrageous fines as well. So on paper, the Eighth Amendment says, oh, you can't do this. You can't do this. But we know what they're doing in practice. They're holding these people for these ransoms, knowing the people can't make them, and then at the same time, they're in another back room making their scheme on how they're going to violate their Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial. So you have some guys in some states on simple charges that sit in there 2 and 3 years. I mean, look at Khalif. Khalif was in prison for 3 years. He was in Rikers Island for 3 years for supposedly stealing a backpack. I mean, that's outrageous. That even violates New York's speedy trial. Within that time, he should have been taken to trial. That 180 days where you got to go to trial, they didn't do it.
Oh, yes.
Somehow he was held there for 3 years. and then eventually let him go. So they put these bails on the people. And they know the most important thing a person wants to do is get home. That's what they care about. How fast can I get home? You know, it gets to a point where it's not even about the fight anymore. So they know what they do with these bails. And although they're trying to do bail, or they're attempting to do bail reform in certain states, even that, you know, they found the loophole in it already in New Jersey, where most crimes now don't come with a bail. The person, you know, the prosecutor will actually have to file a motion and show how this person is a flight risk, and they can get a bail put on a person. But that's the thing. You know, it's really easy to claim someone's a flight risk. They don't put proper parameters on them, so they can always abuse it. They always leave the loophole, just like the exception clause in the 13th Amendment. So
well, this is tied to the 13th Amendment. This abuse of the 8th Amendment. It's tied to the 13th Amendment. As I've recall Max reporting that the United States may be one of the only, if not among 2 or 3 other countries that even require bail, a cash bail.
That's correct.
So
That's correct.
Again, what was the founding of this nation? Where was all of this newfound wealth coming from? You say the land, but who was working the land? Victims of slavery.
Bodies. Humans.
Okay. So now it has transformed to what we have today. See, that's another way to extort money, by putting them in, threatening them with slavery and taking away people's freedom. So it's all about cash. Mr. Jefferson, what was his name? Thomas Jefferson, the rapist, bragged in a letter about how his capitalism, his capital increased with the birth of every victim of slavery on his plantation. So, man, this is all a part of it. So we are coming up to the last portion of our program, where we each give some final comments. Want to thank our callers for calling in and chiming in. Brother Bragg, Sister Adrian, during Columbia's fighting a good fight against slavery and human trafficking, which has been legalized here in the United States. Has always been legal and a legitimate. When I say legitimate, I'm talking about in terms of, people act like there's nothing wrong with it. They act like it is a legitimate business because they've been practicing it for so long. So I will toss it to Otis. Otis, you got any final thoughts for tonight?
Well, I'll try to end on the same vein I always do, trying to convince people to see beyond what they think is the norm. I had someone approach me today on Facebook telling me maybe we ought to just outlaw crime so we don't have to lock people up and send them to jail. No, maybe we should find a system of justice so those who deserve to be in jail will go to jail but still be treated like human beings and not become a profit center, like the conversation he just had about bail bonds. What's wrong with bail bonds? They have money bonds where you put up cash, but the bail bond system is another scam because so many of these states have set it up so the bondsman doesn't just get the 10% that the family doesn't get back. They also, depending on what your case is, they can charge you additional fees for having to come out to check and make sure you haven't run off. Surveillance.
Absolutely.
So you can't. As a matter of fact, there are other scams too of putting you in at one locale, knowing that you have a live warrant at another, holding you in that adjoining jurisdiction, and then rather than do what they normally do while you're incarcerated, the adjoining jurisdiction puts a hold on you and they all work it out together. Oh no, they let you pay the bond and get out in one jurisdiction, and when you walk out the door, the people who have the other bond for you are waiting to lock you up again. The bail bondsman himself calls the adjoining jurisdiction and puts you right back in the same. It's all about profit. And people need to understand that it's a system of graft and slavery, and it's built on extorting money from bodies, human beings.
All right. Thank you for that, Otis. Your final comments, Yusel?
Again, thanks to the callers, and You know, we have to, you know, keep putting up the good fight, keep getting the word out. You know, I'm thankful for having the opportunity to sit in. You know, I learn a lot from both of you, you know, each week, and you know, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. You know, it's something that's very near and dear to my heart, and you know, we have to. I'm sorry, I was trying to multitask and I wasn't doing a good job at it, at either one. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. You know, we've come a long way and we still have a long way to go. And I'm just glad that, you know, two gentlemen like you are part of the mission.
All right. Well, I'll close it out by thanking both of you gentlemen and our callers again. And for all the people who are putting in work in this new abolitionist movement, which is a movement towards not reforming slavery, but abolishing slavery. And in the spirit of Max Partis, abolition is a reason for a revolution so we can finally know some peace. Know some peace. Peace.
Good night.
Rise up, 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 rise up. Showtime. Just lift your eyes up, let your wise rise up. See the signs of the times. If it's time, rise up, rise up. When death and hell dwell among all God's people, when those we chose and trusted have become completely corrupted and inherently evil, when the feast that feeds you starves our father's children, when snuff, porn, and pedo forms begin to get